Hello, and welcome back, Silent Science World. Tonight, we drift into a subject that has followed humanity through every age and every culture. The idea that healing is not about fixing a single broken piece, but about understanding an entire living system. This way of looking at the body has traveled across centuries and continents. It ties breathing to feeling, nourishment to vitality, and thought to flesh and bone. It asks one deceptively simple question. What do we discover when we stop staring at fragments and start looking at the whole? Along the way tonight, we will wander through ideas that feel at once ancient and startlingly modern. The quiet ways your body mends itself while you sleep, the invisible pull of the spaces around you, and the deep, constant conversation between mind and body that never really stops, even when you're not paying attention to it. If these slow, thoughtful journeys bring you comfort, feel free to follow along, leave a note below, or share it with someone who might need a calm hour tonight. It helps this little corner of the internet find the people who need it. But for now, there's nothing to do but settle in. Let your shoulders fall. Let your eyelids grow heavy. And as the day dissolves behind you, let's walk together through this remarkable way of understanding health. Let's begin. Whole person healing looks after the individual, not merely the ailment. At its finest, this approach opens with a bigger question than simply, where does it hurt? It wonders how a person rests, eats, moves, worries, labors, connects with others, and recovers from hardship. A pounding head might trace back to tight muscles, tired eyes, dehydration, stress, a medication, shifting hormones, or something more serious that truly needs medical attention. An unsettled stomach might be shaped by what was eaten, an infection, anxiety, poor rest, or the gut's own private nervous system. What's fascinating is that the body almost never behaves like a collection of separate machines. It behaves more like an orchestra, where changing one section changes the sound of everything else. None of this means abandoning tests, scans, or medicine. It means placing them inside the larger story of a living, breathing person. This kind of medicine becomes most powerful when it pairs careful evidence with the plain human truth that every body carries a history, a set of habits, and a life wrapped around it. The very word holistic grows from an idea of completeness. Its root reaches back to an old word meaning whole, and that small word carries surprising weight. It suggests that a human being is not simply a heart, a stomach, a spine, or a printout of lab results. A person is an entire living pattern. Biology, emotion, surroundings, relationships, and daily rhythms constantly shaping one another. This way of thinking gained real momentum in the last century, when certain scientists and physicians began resisting the idea that life could be understood only by breaking it into isolated parts. They noticed that living systems have qualities that vanish the moment you split them apart. A single note is not a melody. A single cell is not a body. A single symptom is rarely the whole illness. The word reminds us that health can be read as a pattern, not simply repaired like a broken appliance. Many modern hospitals now weave integrative therapies into standard treatment. In certain medical centers, a care plan might include surgery, chemotherapy, medication, or physical therapy, while also offering carefully chosen support such as acupuncture, nutritional guidance, mindfulness training, massage music sessions, or relaxation coaching. None of this is meant to replace conventional medicine. The stronger model is integration, where supportive care eases pain, nausea, anxiety, exhaustion, or sleeplessness, while doctors continue treating the underlying disease. This shift matters because it reveals medicine becoming more interested in the entire experience of being ill. A patient isn't only trying to survive an operation or finish a course of treatment. They are also trying to sleep, to cope, to eat, to think clearly, and to feel a little less alone. Handled responsibly, these extra layers of care can turn a hospital from a place that only fights disease into a place that also supports recovery. Stress can slow healing through pathways we can actually measure. When danger passes quickly, the stress response is genuinely useful. It sharpens focus, lifts energy, and readies the body to act. But when pressure lingers for days, months, or years, that same response can become a burden. Stress hormones can influence inflammation, sleep, immune activity, blood sugar, digestion, and the repair of damaged tissue. A small cut, for instance, may heal more slowly when the body is under prolonged strain, not because someone is weak or thinking negatively, but because the body is rationing its resources under a sense of ongoing threat, preparing for survival rather than restoration. This is what makes stress such an important bridge between emotion and medicine. A hard life can leave real fingerprints in a person's chemistry. Rest, safety, connection, and support are not luxuries added on top of healing. They can become part of the healing environment itself. Meditation can reshape the brain's attention networks over time. From the outside, meditation looks like stillness, but on the inside it functions as training. During practice, attention is guided back again and again, often toward the breath, a bodily sensation, a sound, or a chosen word. Each return is like a tiny rep in a mental gym. Research suggests that regular practice can influence networks tied to attention, self-awareness, emotional regulation, and the wandering mind. The most surprising part is that the goal isn't to force the mind empty. The wandering itself becomes part of the practice, because noticing it is the very moment attention wakes back up. This is why meditation fits so naturally into whole person thinking. It doesn't only ask what the body is doing, it asks how attention, stress, habit, and perception are quietly shaping the way life feels from the inside. Acupuncture may influence pain signaling through nerves and chemistry. Traditional explanations describe pathways of vital energy, while modern research tends to look at nerves, connective tissue, spinal signaling, and brain chemistry. When fine needles are placed at specific points, the body may respond with local sensation, shifts in blood flow, and the release of natural pain-modulating substances. Some people report meaningful relief, particularly for certain kinds of pain or nausea, though the evidence varies by condition, and that uncertainty is part of what makes the practice so interesting. It sits at a crossroads between an ancient mapping system and modern investigation, raising questions science is still teasing apart. How does touch change pain? How does expectation shape sensation? And how does the nervous system decide what actually matters? Viewed through either lens, acupuncture reveals something profound. Pain isn't just a signal rising from tissue. It's an experience shaped by the entire nervous system. Sleep may be the single most powerful healing tool the body owns. Each night, the body enters a state that looks passive but is intensely active. Immune cells shift their behavior. Growth hormone rises during deep sleep. Memories are sorted and reorganized. Waste products are cleared from brain tissue more efficiently. Muscles relax, blood pressure can drop, and the nervous system cycles through rhythms that help restore balance. Poor sleep, especially when it becomes chronic, can affect appetite, mood, pain sensitivity, blood sugar, inflammation, and decision-making. That makes sleep one of the most ordinary and astonishing forms of medicine we possess. It costs nothing, yet it touches nearly every system in the body. The trouble is that modern life often treats sleep as spare time, something to steal from when the day gets crowded. Whole person medicine looks at it differently. It sees the sleeping body as a quiet workshop, still repairing itself long after awareness has faded. Food can change inflammation, energy, and long-term disease risk. A meal isn't just fuel, it's information entering the body. Proteins become building blocks, carbohydrates influence blood sugar and energy, fats shape cell membranes and chemical messengers, fiber feeds gut microbes, which in turn produce compounds that can affect digestion, immunity, and metabolism. Over the years, eating patterns can shift the risk of heart disease, type 2 diabetes, certain cancers, and inflammatory conditions. This doesn't mean any single ingredient is magical or that food should be treated as a moral test. The larger pattern matters most. Colorful plants, enough protein, healthy fats, whole grains, fermented foods, and shared meals can all become part of a life that supports health. Food is also culture, memory, comfort, and community, which is why nutritional healing is never only chemistry. It's the meeting place of biology, tradition, pleasure, and everyday choice. Human touch can settle the nervous system within minutes. A warm hand on the shoulder, a careful massage, or a reassuring embrace can shift the body's state with surprising speed. Touch receptors in the skin send signals inward, and the nervous system begins interpreting them. Safe touch can soften muscle tension, slow the breath, reduce a sense of threat, and support the release of bonding chemicals such as oxytocin. This helps explain why touch appears across healing traditions worldwide, from massage and midwifery to the comforting rituals surrounding illness and grief. It also shows why care can feel entirely different when it's cold and rushed, compared to when it's attentive and respectful. Touch must always be wanted and appropriate. But when it is, it speaks a biological language older than words. Long before we can name fear or pain, the body already understands contact. Traditional Chinese medicine reads health through patterns and relationships rather than isolated parts. It doesn't begin by dividing the body into separate pieces. It looks for patterns: heat or cold, fullness or deficiency, movement or stagnation. The vocabulary is very different from modern anatomy, yet the underlying goal is the same: understanding how signs fit together across the whole person. A practitioner might weigh sleep, appetite, temperature, pulse, mood, digestion, pain, and even the appearance of the tongue. From there, treatment may draw on acupuncture, herbal medicine, movement, massage, or dietary guidance. Some claims remain debated, and certain herbs can be risky without proper guidance. Still, this pattern-based approach is historically remarkable. It built a medical map in which the body is seen as a landscape of relationships. Even where modern science offers different explanations, the underlying question stays intriguing. What does it mean when distant symptoms appear connected, and what hidden rhythm might be linking them? The ancient Greek physicians tied health to food, lifestyle, and surroundings long before modern laboratories existed. Their tradition looked at diet, exercise, climate, water, sleep, and daily habits as genuine parts of the medical picture. That may sound obvious today, but at the time it marked a major shift away from blaming illness on fate or divine punishment. A patient became someone whose body responded to seasons, environment, work, meals, and rest. This wasn't modern science, and plenty of its specific ideas were mistaken. Yet the broader question still feels remarkably alive. What kind of life is this body trying to survive? What pressures surround it? What patterns keep returning? In that sense, this early medicine planted a seed that whole person care still tends today. Healing begins by studying the person inside their world, not the symptom in isolation. Gentle movement can help the body relearn a sense of safety after stress. When stress or trauma makes the body feel unsafe, stillness can sometimes feel tense, and intense exercise can feel overwhelming. Carefully chosen movement offers another path. Slow walking, stretching, yoga, Tai Chi, or guided mobility work can show the nervous system that motion doesn't always mean danger. The key lies in choice, pacing, and attention. A person learns to notice sensation without forcing through it, to explore strength without punishment, and to stop before the body panics. Over time, movement can become a conversation with the nervous system. The muscles say we can reach, the breath says we can return, and the brain slowly updates its predictions. This isn't about performance or appearance. It's about rebuilding trust from the inside out. In whole person healing, movement can become less like exercise and more like a careful reintroduction to being alive. Slow-paced breathing can influence heart rhythm and blood pressure. When someone breathes at a measured pace, especially with a longer exhale, the heart often shows a gentle rise and fall in rhythm. This natural variation reflects communication between breathing, circulation, and the nervous system. Slow breathing can improve the reflexes that help regulate blood pressure, and for some people, it may support relaxation or modest reductions in pressure over time. The body isn't a machine with separate switches for lungs and heart. It's a coordinated system, where each inhale changes pressure in the chest and each exhale sends different signals along nerve pathways. That's why paced breathing can feel almost like steering an internal tide. Nothing dramatic needs to happen. The rhythm itself becomes the message, and breath by breath, the cardiovascular system receives a quieter pattern to follow. Massage may reduce pain by changing how the nervous system processes signals. It's often imagined as simply loosening tight muscles, but the deeper story involves the nervous system directly. Pressure, warmth, and movement activate receptors in the skin, connective tissue, and muscle. Those signals travel toward the spinal cord and brain, where they can compete with pain messages, shift attention, and reduce protective tension. Massage may also help people feel safer inside a body that has been bracing against discomfort. This matters because pain isn't only about damaged tissue, it's about how the brain evaluates danger. A skilled, respectful touch can tell the body that movement is possible, that the area can be contacted without harm, and that guarding can finally ease. This doesn't make massage a cure for every condition, but it makes it a fascinating form of communication. Hands apply pressure, while the real conversation happens in nerves, perception, and trust. The Indian tradition of Ayurveda has organized healing around balance for thousands of years. Health in this system is understood through patterns of balance, digestion, constitution, season, and daily rhythm. Its classical texts describe the body as constantly interacting with food, climate, age, emotion, and habit. Rather than treating every person identically, Ayurveda developed the idea that different people may need different forms of support depending on their tendencies and circumstances. Some of its practices are still being studied today, while others remain traditional beliefs rather than proven medicine. What makes it fascinating is its scale. It isn't just a list of remedies, but an entire philosophy of living, attentive to morning routines, sleep, oils, herbs, meals, movement, and mental state. At its safest and most useful, it reminds us that health isn't a single event, it's something shaped through repetition. Indigenous healing traditions often treat community itself as part of medicine. In many of these traditions, illness isn't seen as belonging only to one body. It can involve family, land, ancestry, grief, responsibility, ceremony, and belonging. Healing may include plants, songs, touch, storytelling, spiritual practice, shared meals, or the guidance of elders. These traditions are diverse, and they should never be flattened into a single, simple idea. Yet many hold a truth that modern systems sometimes forget. Humans are social creatures, and a person can become unwell through isolation, displacement, shame, or broken connection. Recovery may need more than a prescription. It may need witnessing, cultural memory, restored relationships, and a place within the circle. Again, this doesn't replace emergency or modern treatment. It expands the meaning of care and reminds us that the human nervous system was never designed to heal entirely alone. Herbal medicine gave modern science many of its earliest starting points. For most of human history, plants were among the main tools available for easing pain, fever, infection, childbirth, digestion, and sleep. Some remedies failed, some were dangerous, but others contained active compounds strong enough to become the foundation of modern drugs. The astonishing part is that traditional plant knowledge often grew from generations of close observation. People watched what soothed, what harmed, what lowered fever, what numbed pain, and what changed the body in repeatable ways. Modern pharmacology then learned to isolate compounds, test doses, measure risk, and understand mechanisms. In this meeting of old and new, the forest became a kind of chemical library. Leaves, bark, roots, and seeds carried molecules shaped by evolution. Plants made them to defend themselves, attract partners, or survive stress. Humans learned carefully and imperfectly that some of those molecules could help us too. The placebo effect can trigger real, measurable changes inside the brain. For a long time, placebo responses were dismissed as imaginary. Modern research has made that dismissal much harder to defend. When someone expects relief, the brain can release its own pain-modulating chemicals, shift attention, and change how strongly signals are felt. In pain studies, brain regions tied to emotion, expectation, and sensation can all respond simply because a person believes help is on the way. This doesn't mean a placebo can cure every illness, and it doesn't mean symptoms are fake. It means belief, context, trust, and ritual can reach deeply into biology. A pill's color, a practitioner's confidence, the simple feeling of being cared for, all of these can influence the nervous system. The mind isn't floating somewhere above the body. It is part of the body, made of tissue, chemistry, memory, and prediction. The story of aspirin traces back to willow bark remedies used across ancient cultures for pain and fever, long before anyone understood the chemistry behind them. The bark was bitter, but it carried a chemical clue. Over time, scientists identified the active family of compounds and eventually developed the medicine we now know as aspirin, one of the most famous drugs in the world, able to ease pain, reduce fever, and later prove important in heart care because of its effect on platelets. This story is fascinating because it shows the long bridge between folk observation and laboratory refinement. A tree by a riverbank becomes a remedy becomes a chemical becomes a tablet found in medicine cabinets across the planet. Yet the modern drug isn't simply the same as chewing bark. Science changed its form, dose, reliability, and safety. Nature offered the hint. Medicine did the careful shaping. Foxglove became the powerful heart medicine digitalis through careful, patient study. Foxglove is beautiful, with tall stems of bell-shaped purple flowers, but it's also poisonous, and that danger is exactly why its medical story is so dramatic. In the 18th century, an English physician studied a traditional remedy containing foxglove and carefully investigated its effects on a condition often linked to heart failure. He found that in controlled amounts, compounds from the plant could strengthen the heartbeat and help the body remove excess fluid. Too much could be deadly. Too little might do nothing. From that narrow line came digitalis, one of the classic examples of a plant remedy transformed into a powerful cardiac drug. The lesson isn't that every herb is safe, it's almost the opposite. Plants can be potent chemistry, and Foxglove shows how healing and harm can grow from the very same stem, separated only by knowledge, dose, and care. Quinine came from cinchona bark long before modern anti-malarial drugs existed. In the high forests of South America, the bark of the cinchona tree became famous for treating the fevers of malaria. Indigenous knowledge and colonial history became tangled together in its spread, and eventually, physicians across the world adopted the bitter bark as a major weapon against a devastating disease. The active compound, quinine, went on to change medicine, travel, and the shape of entire empires. Malaria had long dictated where people could live, fight, build, and survive, and a substance drawn from tree bark altered that map. Later, chemists learned to isolate quinine and develop other anti-malarial drugs from it. The story is impressive but also complicated, involving extraction, trade, and the movement of knowledge across cultures under deeply unequal power. It reminds us that medicine is never only chemistry, it's also history. A molecule can carry the taste of bark, the memory of forests, and the weight of human ambition. Artemisinin was rediscovered through ancient medical texts. In the 20th century, researchers searching for better malaria treatments turned back to old medical writings, where one passage described using sweet wormwood in a striking way. A scientist and her team investigated the plant, refined the extraction method, and identified artemisinin, a compound that became a crucial anti-malarial therapy. What makes this story so striking is the direction of discovery. It wasn't simply modern science marching forward on its own, it was modern science looking backward with new tools, finding a clue preserved in traditional knowledge, then testing and refining it. Artemisinin went on to save countless lives when used properly in combination treatments, standing as one of the clearest examples of why old medical traditions should neither be blindly romanticized nor carelessly dismissed. Sometimes the past holds a doorway, and science supplies the key. Yoga began as a philosophy long before it became a global health practice. Today, most people know yoga through mats, stretches, studios, and relaxation classes, but its roots reach into ancient Indian philosophy, where early practice was concerned with discipline, attention, ethics, breath, meditation, and the nature of consciousness itself. The physical postures that dominate many modern classes are only one small part of a much larger tradition. Over time, yoga traveled, changed, and blended with new cultures, becoming a global practice used for flexibility, strength, stress reduction, balance, and body awareness. Research suggests it can support well-being for some people, especially when taught safely and adapted to individual needs. Its deeper fascination lies in how it joins body and attention together. A movement is never merely a movement, and a breath is never merely air. In yoga, posture, focus, and sensation become part of one practice, inviting the person to notice the body from within. Breathwork can shift the body from alarm toward calm. Breathing is unusual because it's both automatic and voluntary. You don't have to remember to breathe, yet you can also choose to slow it, deepen it, pause it, or shape its rhythm. That makes the breath a rare doorway between conscious action and the automatic nervous system. When breathing becomes slow and steady, the body may interpret the pattern as a sign of safety. Heart rate can settle, muscle tension may soften, and attention can drift away from threat. Different traditions have used breath practices for centuries, and modern science is now exploring why they feel so powerful. The wonder is that something so ordinary can become an instrument. No equipment, no special setting, just air moving in and out, carrying messages from the lungs to the brain, reminding the body that the emergency may finally be passing. Aromatherapy works largely through smell, memory, and emotion. A scent can pull a person back years in an instant. Fresh bread, rain on pavement, a childhood garden. Smell has unusually direct links to brain regions involved in memory and emotion, which helps explain why fragrance can feel so deeply personal. Aromatherapy uses plant-derived oils to create these sensory effects, and some people find certain scents relaxing, focusing, comforting, or refreshing. The strongest evidence isn't that fragrance magically cures disease, but that it can influence mood, stress, nausea, or the overall atmosphere of care for some people, and that alone is remarkable. A tiny airborne molecule enters the nose, binds to receptors, and becomes a feeling. It may become a memory. It may change the tone of an entire room. In whole person practice, scent matters because healing is never experienced in the abstract. It happens in places with textures, sounds, and smells. Lavender in particular has been studied for its gentle relaxation effects. It has followed people through gardens, pillows, baths, oils, and bedside rituals for centuries. Its fragrance comes from a mixture of compounds that give it a floral, herbal character many associate with rest. Studies have explored whether lavender aroma can reduce anxiety, improve perceived sleep quality, or ease stress in certain settings. The results aren't magical, and they depend heavily on the person, the product, and the context. Yet, lavender's popularity reveals something important about sensory medicine. People have always used their environment to guide the body toward a different state. A dimmer room, a familiar blanket, a calmer scent. Lavender doesn't need to be a miracle to be interesting. Its power may lie in the meeting of chemistry, memory, expectation, and ritual. One breath of fragrance can become a signal that the day is beginning to loosen its grip. Music can ease anxiety before medical procedures. Before an operation, a scan, or an invasive test, the mind can race ahead into fear, and music can interrupt that spiral in a way words sometimes cannot. In clinical music therapy, trained practitioners may use listening, rhythm, singing, or simple musical interaction to help patients regulate emotion and attention. Even recorded music chosen by the patient themselves can reduce anxiety in certain medical settings. The reason may involve breathing, distraction, familiarity, pleasure, and the brain's deep response to pattern. Music gives time a shape. It offers the nervous system something to follow besides worry. A melody can slow the pace of thought. A steady rhythm can make a frightening room feel less strange. This doesn't remove the need for anesthesia, information, or skilled care. It adds another layer. Where medicine treats the body, music can help the person endure the moment. Time spent in nature can lower measurable stress markers in the body. A walk among trees, time near water, or even a view of greenery can change how the body responds to stress. Research has linked nature exposure with lower perceived stress, improved mood, and shifts in markers such as cortisol or blood pressure in certain situations. The effect isn't mysterious in any supernatural sense. Humans evolved in living landscapes, not under fluorescent lights and traffic noise. Natural settings often provide softer patterns of attention. Leaves move without demanding urgency, bird song varies without becoming a threat, and the eyes travel over repeating natural shapes at different scales. The body may read all of this as a safer environment. What feels like simple refreshment may actually be an ancient biological recognition. Nature doesn't need to say anything. It simply surrounds the senses with signals that life is larger than the current worry. Forest bathing became a public health practice in Japan, where the phrase describes simply taking in the atmosphere of the forest. It grew popular in the late 20th century as researchers and public health thinkers explored how time spent among trees might reduce stress and support well-being. This isn't hiking for achievement. It's slower than that. The point is to notice the air, the textures, the light, the sounds, and the scent of trees. Studies have explored effects on mood, stress hormones, blood pressure, and immune markers, though results vary and are still being investigated. What makes forest bathing so appealing is its simplicity. It turns attention away from performance and back toward presence. A person doesn't have to conquer a mountain or track every step. They only have to enter a living place and let the senses open. The forest becomes less like scenery and more like a therapeutic environment. Bright morning light helps reset the body's internal clock. Deep inside the brain sits a master clock that uses light as its strongest time signal. Morning light reaches special cells in the eye, which send messages to the brain's timing center, and from there the body adjusts rhythms of alertness, temperature, hormones, digestion, and sleep readiness later that night. This is why stepping into daylight early in the day can help anchor the sleep-wake cycle, especially after late nights, travel across time zones, or too much evening screen light. The effect is subtle but powerful. Light isn't only something that lets us see, it's biological information telling the body which part of the planet's rotation we're currently living through. Long before clocks and alarms existed, sunrise was the great organizer. Modern life can blur that signal, but morning light still speaks an ancient language the brain understands. Circadian rhythms shape hormones, digestion, mood, and immunity. The body is full of clocks, not just the one in the brain, but timing systems in the liver, gut, muscles, fat tissue, immune cells, and nearly every organ. These rhythms help decide when certain hormones rise, when digestion is best prepared for food, when body temperature peaks, and when repair processes are favored. When daily routines become wildly irregular, those clocks can slip out of alignment. Shift work, late meals, poor sleep, and bright light at night can all confuse the timing signals. This is why whole person health pays attention to rhythm, not only behavior. The same meal may affect the body differently depending on when it's eaten. The same stress may feel harder to bear after a broken night. Circadian biology reveals that health isn't only about what we do, it's also about when we do it. Loneliness can affect health as strongly as many everyday habits. It isn't simply the feeling of being alone. It can become a biological condition, especially when it lasts. The body is built to read social isolation as danger, because for most of human history, separation from the group meant real risk. When that alarm stays switched on, stress pathways may remain active, sleep can become lighter, inflammation can rise, motivation can fade, and even the immune system may shift its priorities as though preparing for injury rather than ordinary repair. This is why modern health research treats loneliness as more than sadness. It can influence the heart, the brain, and the way people recover from illness. A person may eat well, move often, and still suffer if connection has disappeared. Whole person medicine pays attention to this because the human body wasn't designed as a solitary machine. It was designed for belonging. Social connection is a surprisingly powerful predictor of long life. When scientists study longevity, they often look at diet, exercise, genetics, and medical care. Yet again and again, relationships appear in the story. People with stronger social ties often live longer than those who are isolated, even after accounting for other factors. The reason isn't one single mechanism. Friends and family can notice changes, encourage treatment, share meals, reduce stress, and give life a sense of purpose. Conversation itself can stimulate memory, emotion, and attention. Being needed can pull a person out of passivity. Being known can soften the body's sense of threat. This makes connection one of the most quietly powerful health influences we have. It doesn't arrive in a bottle or a scan result. It arrives as a phone call, a shared walk, a familiar voice, and the steady knowledge that someone would notice if you were gone. Gratitude practices can gently shift attention toward emotional balance. The brain is excellent at noticing danger, disappointment, and unfinished problems. That bias helped our ancestors survive. But in modern life, it can make the mind circle endlessly around what's wrong. Gratitude practice doesn't deny pain or pretend life is perfect. Instead, it trains attention to also include what is still supportive, beautiful, useful, or kind. Writing down a few specific moments can change the way memory is searched, and the mind begins looking for evidence of care, relief, or meaning. Over time, some people find this practice helps mood, sleep, and resilience. Its power lies in specificity, not simply "I am grateful for life," but the warmth of tea, a message from a friend, the breath that finally settled after a hard hour. Whole person care values this because attention is part of experience. What we repeatedly notice can shape the emotional weather inside us. Compassion meditation can change how the brain responds to suffering. Compassion, it turns out, can be trained like a skill. In certain meditation practices, a person quietly brings to mind themselves, someone they love, a stranger, and sometimes even someone difficult. while wishing them safety or relief. This may sound simple, but the emotional effect can be profound. The practice asks the mind to approach suffering without shutting down or turning away. Brain studies suggest compassion training can influence regions involved in empathy, emotion regulation, and the motivation to help. The aim isn't to become endlessly soft or overwhelmed. It's to build a steadier heart, one that can recognize pain without drowning in it. In a medical setting, this matters for both patients and caregivers. Compassion can reduce the sense of isolation around suffering, turning care from a mere procedure into a human exchange where the person in pain is truly met, not just managed. Mindfulness began in ancient contemplative traditions long before it entered clinical research. Before it appeared in hospitals, clinics, apps, and workplace courses, it was cultivated within contemplative practice, especially within Buddhist tradition, involving close attention to present experience, breath, sensation, thought, and emotion, without being swept away by every reaction. When modern researchers began adapting it for clinical settings, they stripped away some of the religious framing and studied it as a trainable mental skill. That journey is remarkable. An ancient practice of awareness moved into stress clinics, pain programs, brain imaging labs, and psychotherapy, becoming a bridge between inner experience and measurable change. Mindfulness doesn't ask the mind to be blank. It asks the mind to see more clearly. A thought can be noticed as a thought. A feeling can be felt without becoming the whole world. In whole-person medicine, this matters because awareness can change our relationship with discomfort, fear, craving, and pain. A structured program built around mindfulness was developed in the 1970s at a university medical center, where a researcher created an approach that brought mindfulness practice directly into modern healthcare. It was designed for people living with stress, chronic pain, and difficult medical conditions. The idea was never to promise a cure. It was to teach a different way of meeting experience. Participants practiced body scans, sitting meditation, mindful movement, and daily awareness exercises. Over time, this program helped open the door to serious clinical research into meditation, and its influence has been enormous. Hospitals, therapists, and researchers began asking whether attention itself could be part of care, not as a replacement for medicine, but as support for the person living inside the illness. The program's quiet revolution was this: even when pain cannot be removed completely, suffering may change when the mind learns to relate to it differently. Tai Chi is sometimes called meditation in motion. At first glance, it may look like slow choreography, but every movement carries intention. The body shifts weight, turns, reaches, and returns with steady control, while breath and attention follow the motion. Instead of pushing harder, the practitioner learns to soften effort and move with balance, which is why the practice is often described as moving meditation. It trains awareness through the body rather than through stillness alone. Tai Chi grew from Chinese martial traditions, yet many people now practice it purely for health, coordination, and calm focus. Its beauty lies in the way strength hides inside softness. A raised hand, a turning foot, or a gentle shift of weight can become a lesson in stability. For whole-person medicine, Tai Chi offers a striking image of health itself, not rigid control, not collapse, but responsive movement guided by attention, breath, and balance. Tai Chi can also improve balance and reduce falls among older adults. For an older person, a fall can change everything. It can lead to injury, fear, loss of confidence, and reduced independence. Tai Chi is interesting because it trains several protective skills at once. It strengthens the legs through slow weight shifts, improves awareness of foot placement, and challenges posture without sudden impact. It also teaches the body to move smoothly from one position to another. Unlike some forms of exercise, it can be adapted to different ability levels, which makes it especially useful for people who need gentle but meaningful practice. The movements may look delicate, yet they demand concentration and control. Over weeks and months, the nervous system learns exactly where the body is in space, the legs learn to respond, and the mind learns not to rush. In this way, Tai Chi turns balance into a practiced art. Qigong combines movement, breath, attention, and traditional Chinese theory. It includes many different practices, but most share a common thread. The body moves in simple patterns while breathing and attention are coordinated together. Some forms are standing and still, others flow through repeated gestures. In traditional Chinese thought, Qigong is connected with the cultivation and movement of vital energy, while modern explanations usually focus on breathing, relaxation, balance, circulation, and nervous system regulation. What makes Qigong fascinating is its range. It can be martial, meditative, medical, or spiritual depending on the tradition. A person may practice it to feel steadier, more flexible, less tense, or more aware of bodily sensation. It doesn't require athletic performance. It asks for presence, repetition, and patience. In a world obsessed with speed, Qigong offers a different kind of discipline. Small movements done with attention can become a surprisingly rich form of self-care. Reiki remains controversial because its underlying energy claims are unproven. It's a Japanese healing practice in which a practitioner places their hands lightly on or near the body with the intention of channeling a form of universal life energy. Many people describe sessions as calming, comforting, or emotionally supportive. The controversy comes from the central claim: modern science hasn't confirmed the existence of the energy mechanism Reiki proposes, and research on outcomes is mixed. Benefits may relate more to relaxation, expectation, touch, attention, and the peaceful setting than to any measurable transfer of energy. This makes Reiki a useful example of how whole-person medicine must think carefully. A practice can feel meaningful without its explanation being scientifically proven. It may help someone relax during a frightening time, but it shouldn't be presented as a cure for disease. The honest approach is neither mockery nor blind belief. It's curiosity paired with clear boundaries, respect for experience, and respect for evidence. Homeopathy uses extreme dilution, and the evidence behind it remains highly disputed. It was developed in the late 18th century, built on the central ideas that like cures like, and that repeated dilution with shaking can make a remedy more potent. Many homeopathic products are diluted so far that essentially no molecule of the original substance remains. Supporters believe the remedy retains some kind of healing imprint. Critics argue this conflicts with basic chemistry, and clinical evidence generally doesn't show reliable effects beyond placebo for most conditions. This makes homeopathy one of the most debated practices in alternative medicine. Its popularity reveals how deeply people want care that feels personal, attentive, and low in side effects. Yet desire alone cannot prove a treatment works. The safest message is clear: homeopathy shouldn't replace evidence-based care for serious illness. Its story remains fascinating because it shows the tension between belief, experience, scientific testing, and the human hunger to be heard. Naturopathy blends lifestyle counseling with a range of selected natural therapies. It isn't a single treatment, but a broad system that often includes nutrition, sleep, exercise, stress management, herbal products, supplements, and prevention-focused counseling. Some parts overlap strongly with mainstream health advice, especially lifestyle medicine, while other parts vary widely in evidence and safety. Training and regulation also differ by country, which means the quality of care can vary greatly. The most useful naturopathic ideas often involve careful attention to daily habits and early prevention. The riskiest moments come when unproven treatments are used instead of necessary medical care, or when supplements interact dangerously with medicines. This mixture makes naturopathy both interesting and complicated. It reflects a real need in healthcare. People want time, explanation, and practical guidance. When grounded in evidence and cooperation with physicians, lifestyle-centered support can be genuinely valuable. When it drifts away from science, it can become dangerous. Functional medicine searches for patterns across body systems rather than treating complaints in isolation. A practitioner may explore digestion, sleep, hormones, stress, nutrition, inflammation, genetics, and environmental exposures, then search for patterns that might connect them. This approach appeals to people with complex chronic symptoms who feel that standard appointments have treated each issue separately. Its strength is the desire to connect the dots. Its weakness is that some testing and treatment claims can run ahead of solid evidence. Systems thinking is legitimate and important, but it has to be handled with discipline. The body truly is interconnected, yet not every connection is meaningful. A responsible approach asks which links are proven, which are plausible, and which are pure speculation. At its best, functional medicine invites medicine to widen its lens. At its worst, it can turn uncertainty into expensive certainty. The difference matters deeply. Integrative oncology focuses on comfort, symptoms, and quality of life during cancer care, which can be physically and emotionally overwhelming. It aims to support patients while conventional treatments target the cancer itself, and may include nutrition support, acupuncture for nausea or pain, mindfulness for anxiety, exercise guidance for fatigue, massage for comfort, and counseling for distress. The key point is that these therapies are never substitutes for surgery, radiation, chemotherapy, immunotherapy, or other evidence-based treatment. They're meant to help people get through them with more strength and less suffering. This field shows whole-person care at its most careful and compassionate. It recognizes that survival isn't the only concern during cancer treatment. Sleep matters, appetite matters, fear matters, pain matters, family life matters. A person receiving treatment isn't just a diagnosis moving through a protocol. They're a whole human being trying to remain themselves while facing one of life's most frightening journeys. Acupressure uses touch instead of needles on traditional points, and it's closely related to acupuncture, though it applies pressure with fingers, thumbs, bands, or small tools, rather than inserting needles. Many people know it through wrist points used for nausea, especially during travel, pregnancy, or medical treatment. Traditional explanations describe stimulation along energy meridians. Modern interpretations focus more on nerve input, attention, expectation, and the body's response to pressure. One reason acupressure is appealing is that it feels accessible. It can be taught, practiced gently, and used without equipment in many situations. Evidence varies by condition, and it shouldn't be treated as a cure-all, but as a supportive tool. It shows how simple contact can become structured care. A small point on the wrist or hand can become a place where sensation, intention, and relief meet. The body notices pressure, and the mind notices being helped. Reflexology maps the body onto the feet and hands. Practitioners apply pressure to specific areas of the feet, hands, or ears, believed to correspond with organs and body regions. This map isn't accepted as anatomy in the modern medical sense. Pressing a point on the foot hasn't been shown to directly treat a distant organ, as the tradition claims. Yet many people find sessions deeply relaxing, and foot touch can be powerful in its own right. The feet carry weight all day, contain rich sensory nerves, and are often ignored until they hurt. When someone gives them careful attention, the whole body may respond with a sense of release. Reflexology is fascinating because it blends symbolic mapping with real sensory experience. The map itself may be debated, but the nervous system's response to skilled, calming touch is very real. Sometimes comfort begins at the ground. Cupping leaves circular marks by pulling skin upward through suction, and the practice can look startling because it often leaves round marks across the skin. It involves placing cups on the body and creating suction that pulls the skin and superficial tissue upward, and it's been used in Chinese, Middle Eastern, and other healing traditions for centuries. People seek it out for muscle tension, pain, or a sense of release. Modern explanations usually focus on local blood flow, pressure effects, connective tissue stimulation, and the strong sensory input created by suction. The marks aren't bruises in the usual injury sense, though they do reflect small broken blood vessels near the surface. Evidence for cupping varies, and it should be done carefully to avoid burns, infection, or skin damage. Its visual drama gives it a mysterious reputation. But the core idea is simple. Instead of pressing down, cupping pulls upward, giving the body a very different kind of signal. Moxibustion warms acupuncture points using burning mugwort, a dried herb known as moxa, which is burned near the skin or above acupuncture points to create warmth. In traditional East Asian medicine, it's used to influence the movement of vital energy and dispel cold from the body. To a modern observer, the immediate effect is heat, scent, ritual, and focused attention on a specific area. The warmth may increase local circulation and create soothing sensory input. The practice has a long history, particularly across East Asian traditions, and must be used carefully, since burns and smoke irritation are possible. What makes moxibustion so intriguing is how elemental it feels: plant matter, heat, skin, breath, and intention coming together in a small ceremony of warmth. It reminds us that medicine hasn't always looked like machines and tablets. Sometimes it has looked like a glowing ember held near the body. Sound baths use vibration to encourage relaxation and stillness. A session usually involves lying down while tones from singing bowls, gongs, chimes, or other instruments fill the room. The word bath is metaphorical, and the listener is immersed in waves of sound. Some tones are steady and spacious, Others shimmer, pulse, or overlap in ways that make ordinary thought harder to hold on to. The body may respond through slower breathing, reduced muscle tension, and a shift in attention away from everyday concerns. Scientific evidence is still developing, and the effects likely come from relaxation, expectation, sound pattern, and the calming environment, rather than any single mystical mechanism. Still, the experience can feel deeply absorbing. Sound reaches places that language doesn't. It can organize silence, soften vigilance, and give the mind something broad enough to rest inside. Sometimes the path toward ease begins not with words, but with vibration. Guided imagery can help patients manage pain and fear. The mind can create scenes vivid enough to genuinely change the body's state. In guided image,